This presentation summarizes the expert testimony on the information and data collected throughout this course. Testimony was presented to a panel of judges to include a CISO and digital forensics investigators from the other 5I Nation teams. The purpose of this testimony was to evaluate national cybersecurity policy and present well-reasoned conclusions. Digital forensics is used to collect, identify, and validate digital data to eventually be able to reconstruct an event or incident that has occurred. It is with that thoroughness and forensic analysis that the findings may be used effectively in the court of law. Cybercrimes are some of the hardest to investigate and or prosecute due to the anonymity cyberspace can provide. The laws and regulations in place can truly handcuff law enforcement in how they procure, preserve, and use digital evidence in legal proceedings. Digital evidence pervades all facets of all lives. Everyday actions, including email, vacation photos stored on your smartphone, or using a GPS for a turn-by-turn direction, all leave behind digital evidence. Challenges of digital forensics can be categorized into three parts. Technical challenge, like different media formats, encryption, stenography, anti-forensics, live acquisition and analysis. Legal challenges, jurisdictional issues like we faced at the Five Eyes Nation, privacy issues, and lack of standardized international legislations, as well as resource challenges, volume of data, time taken to acquire and analyze forensics media. During this presentation, the following topics that you see will be covered. U.S. team has over 100 years of cybersecurity experience collectively, and there are digital forensics experts. We followed best practice, the digital forensics process stated in this slide. The expert team needed to ensure collection, analysis, and reporting of electronic data to be presented in a court of law, follow all the required laws and regulations, preserving the metadata, the key information that's needed for forensics purposes. And of course, time is an essence. However, forensics takes a lot of time. For example, it takes 5 hours of collecting data on a 10 gig of storage. Just think about that. Your mobile phone probably has around 200 gigabyte of storage. And of course, integrity of evidence, covert and discreet, because you want to make sure there is no leaking of information to the public, and in-depth analysis, searches help you narrow down the source and the cause. Digital Forensics Compilation Report Act provides a summary of the significant cybersecurity events and artifacts generated in association with the Five Eyes Alliance Summit held between the 5 nations we mentioned earlier. Security measures were considered and implemented far in advance of the start of the Alliance Summit. Preparatory consideration included activities such as considering different cybersecurity laws and policies that each participant nation is subject to, identifying and preparing for known threats to individual countries and technologies used to facilitate the Alliance Summit, and establishing a security policy and technology baseline for each country to abide by. Throughout the summit, the United States team had to investigate the root causes of the attack while remaining cognizant that there are different levels of sharing and collaboration between nations, different levels of trade and defense relationships between these nations. Any error in attribution can have ramifications on international policy. The nation teams worked together to share intelligence gathered on the ransomware attack investigation so the other nation could search through their systems to see if they too had been impacted. The United States team shared information with fellow countries at the summit while exercising best practices in information sharing to avoid threats of United States cybersecurity posture. The lessons learned from the summit have impacted and strengthened the alliance among the Five Eyes nations. There are many digital forensics tools and techniques available to conduct an end to end forensics investigation. An end to end investigation tracks all elements of an attack, including how the attack began, what intermediate devices were used during the attack, and who was attacked. A typical investigation includes a visual analysis of statistically. The development and application of the information and communication technologies have created new battleground. As a special challenge to international security, cyberterrorism arises. Cybersecurity will significantly affect international relations in the 21st century. Different countries have different e-discovery laws. For example, some of them dictate when the data can be retrieved. The time frame is different in every country. NATO's strategic concept, adopted at the end of 2010 at the Lisbon summit, determines that cyber attacks have become more frequent, more organized, and more expensive, causing damage to the government administrations, the business sector, economies, and potentially to the transport and supply. It also states that cyber attacks can reach the level that threatens the national and Euro-Atlantic prosperity, security, and stability. Foreign military intelligence services, organized criminal, terrorist, and extremist groups are the potential sources of such attacks. What is also emphasized in the conclusion of the Lisbon summit is the need to further develop the skills of prevention, recognition, defense, and recovery from cyber attacks, including the use of NATO planning process for the advancement and coordination of a national abilities of cyber protection, assembling all NATO bodies under a centralized cyber protection and a better integration of the NATO cyber awareness, warning, and common response of a member state. The United States Second Circuit Court of Appeals had already previously sided with Microsoft in regards to emails stored in Ireland. The court overturned an earlier ruling disallowing the US government from compelling Microsoft to produce emails that are stored on server located in Dublin, Ireland. Nowadays, cloud computing is growing at a rapid pace. We know that today many companies purchase the cloud service from various providers like Microsoft Azure. They're providing the software and the hardware as a service. Clients and the cloud service providers may be in two different countries. Because of the nature of the cyberspace, there is no physical boundary. If that crime scene occur in this scenario, then the investigator faces many problems like collection all the way to evidence. There is difficulty to identify the source. If that investigator is able to find the location, which exists outside of the country, then the jurisdiction issues will occur. Digital forensics in the cloud is a continuous issue for law enforcement, judiciary, and legislators. And until legislators get it right, digital forensics practitioners will find that their expert testimony may not be accepted. No standards appear to exist for the acquisition of credible evidence from cloud environment. NIST appears to be puzzled with forensics in the cloud, demonstrated through the lack of supportive documentation to guide practitioners. This of itself makes it much harder for governments to legislate for the acquisition of cloud-centric data. One worldwide body that may be of assistance is the United Nations, with a membership size of 193 sovereign states. The Charter of the UN has provision that allows for actions to be taken on issues that affect humanity in the modern world. Given that technology in the 21st century is advancing at an extremely fast pace, and the legal process of the world cannot hope to keep pace, the UN may be the only option. Another option is to allow countries that host globally accessed data centers the option of create data storage legislation equivalent to the Organization of Economic Cooperation Development Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement relating to the reporting tax evasion activities to member jurisdictions. A similar structure where data can be stored without fear of compromise, but released to the law enforcement through a legally accepted method of request would greatly enhance the ability of law enforcement to gather evidence located within various jurisdictions. While numerous international standards exist, a select few apply directly to the 5I members, and their impact facilitates increased trust, communications, and commerce. As you can see, we have listed those laws that applied to our operation at the 5I Summit. And most notable are the Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development, Privacy Guideline, the European Union, and United States Privacy State Agreement, the EU's GDPR, and security standards offered by the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the International Organizations for Standardization. Ethics comprises a set of rules to measure the performance of computer forensics examiners. Various profession terms such ethics as code of professional conduct or responsibility. It's imperative for every computer forensics examiner to maintain the highest level of ethical behavior when conducting investigation, preparing reports, and giving testimony. Because of the wealth of information that can be gained from a computer forensics investigation, ethical considerations should be examined. Computer forensics is essentially a means of gathering electronic evidence during an investigation in order to use information to prosecute a criminal act and to avoid suppressing during the trial. Evidence must be collected carefully and legally. It is particularly important to be aware of privacy rights of suspects, victims, and uninvolved third parties. An investigator needs to leave knowledge of several laws, statutes that govern electronic evidence collection, including the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, also known as the Wiretap Statute, the Electronic Communication Privacy Act, and the USA Patriotic Act. Each of these items affect the legality of electronic evidence and the appropriate procedures to acquire those evidence. In the United States, there is ethical guide that includes some provisions regarding computer-related investigation, such as expert witness, opinions, and expert testimony. The FBI Computer Analysis and Response Team, CART, was constituted in 1984 to deal with increase in cases involving digital evidence. For research and training, the CART works with the Department of Defense Computer Forensics Laboratory. The International Organization for Standards sets standards ISO 27037 for digital forensics was ratified in 2012. In the United States, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was enacted in 1986 to help examiners conduct effective investigations. Since there is no universality accepted standards for computer forensics, the concerned organizations have developed their own codes of ethics to maintain reliability to their members. As stated earlier, the U.S. CISO required the U.S. IT team to collect and compare all cybersecurity laws of the Five Eyes Nations. The Five-Nation team agreed upon a common set of code of ethics, and the details were provided earlier in a readout overview. Cyber attacks can have a significant socioeconomic impact on both global enterprises and individuals. Therefore, cyber criminals should be promptly identified, and high-quality evidence of the attacks should be made available in the courtroom. The U.S. Department of Justice, due to the dramatic increase in computer-related crimes, provides systematic guidance that can assist forensic examiners in collecting electronic evidence in the criminal investigation. There are two primary sources of these laws governing electronic evidence: the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution and the statutory privacy law. The core principle of U.S. Department of Justice regarding computer forensics includes